devotees on the early morning call today? May I know who is there in the call today?
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. This is Geeta from Bethesda.
Hare Krishna, Gita
Hare
Mataji,
Krishna.
Pranam. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you so much for joining.
I'm Gokul Das.
Hare Krishna, Gokul Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Welcome to the call, Prabhuji.
Okay, so
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. This is Nikunja Rasadas from Germantown, Maryland.
Hare Krishna, Nikunjaras Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you so much for joining. Okay.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Madanat Pranam to you and all the devotees on the call. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. This is Rupini Padma Devi Dasi from Orlando.
Hare Krishna, Rupini Padma Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you so much for joining. Okay. Anybody else would like to announce their name? So today we are so fortunate to have His Grace Gokulpati from Mayapur, India, and Prabhuji will enlighten us on Srimad Bhagvatam 7.2.45. So Prabhuji, take over the call now, and if you would like to on your camera, you can do that so that we can see you if you want, Prabhuji. Yeah, please take over the call now.
thank you for I'm not ready for that yet.
Okay, no problem.
I'm dealing with a cold, and I'm not really as presentable as I hoped I would be. I have a
Okay.
sore throat and a cold and stuff.
Yes, we can hear that. But still, you agreed our request and giving class. That is so helpful, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
But this is a preaching activity that you've got going on here, and so I have to support it no matter what.
Yes,
So
Prabhuji.
what I'll do is just, I'm just going to simply read the verse myself, because it takes time to respond, back and forth.
Yeah.
Then I'll read the translation, and I'll speak as I go, because the way my mind is working at this age, I tend to lose. I tend to forget everything I read by the time I get to the end of the purport. Especially, with these challenges I got going now with changes in weather and cold and so forth and that stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to read the verse, or I'm going to try to. I'm also a dyslexic, so bear with me. Oh my God, I have to invoke Om Gana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Minatam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. Now the verse. Nashrota Nanubhaktayam Mukyopi Ata Mahan Asuhu Yastrihendriyavan Atman Sa Chanyaha Anade Hayo. Okay. Translation. Oh, before I go farther, I'm in the habit of catching inconsistencies, contradictions. This is what I did for a living as a private investigator. I was able to close a lot of cases doing this. Hiranyakashipu is telling a story. I'm sure you all remember this. I'm just repeating the context, but there's an inconsistency in why the biggest demon in the world would be talking about such beautiful self-realization knowledge. But we can compare it to he's being a salesman, or that's what politics is. He's trying to assuage his family at the loss of his brother. And he's trying to calm them. He hasn't had his son, Prahlad Maharaj, yet. He hasn't done anything yet to gain his power. But he has this ambition now to kill Vishnu. So, but he has to calm down his family members. So he's going to speak this knowledge that was common back then, which is beautiful knowledge of self-realization. Just like in the West now, whether you're speaking in a corporate environment or on the street, it's the most lofty sounding philosophical thing people can say is do what's best for yourself with flowery language, seek your own path. It all leads to the same wonderful place, that kind of thing. But so that's the talk now in the West, is whether, whatever environment you are. But that kind of talk that doesn't have anything to do with self-realization leads to ultimately just a willingness to, well, I'm seeking for myself and it's me against him, so I'll just step on him to get what I want kind of thing. You see, in other words, it goes downhill fast because it's a Kali Yuga philosophy. Common knowledge back in Hiranyakashipu's day was actual self-realizational knowledge. Everybody knew it, but they had to be reminded of it. So as a politician, he adopted the mood of somebody who truly believed it. Now, being into the mood of it, then he feels it as he's speaking it, this knowledge of self-realization, and that makes him more consistency. That makes him more convincing. That's why inconsistencies have to be noticed by somebody who's, really on the case. This guy's a demon, so he's very good at what he does. He's a big politician. Now I'm going to read the translation. In the body, this is, he's relating a story about Yamaraj coming to some queens who've just lost their king in battle, and they're lamenting while it's hard for them to remember any of the common knowledge of self-realization. They had the privilege of Yamaraj disguising himself as a boy and coming to them and reminding them of what's actually common knowledge back then. So he's this Yamaraj disguised as a boy coming up on the battlefield to these queens lamenting the loss of their king in war. Quote, in the body, the most important substance is the life air, but also that is neither the listener or the speaker. Beyond even the life air, the soul also can do nothing, for it's the supersoul actually, the director, in cooperation with the individual soul, that the supersoul conducting the activities of the body, is different from the body and the living force. Now, a simple way to understand this is that this relationship between supersoul and the individual soul, I found is that, and it's sort of in summary, is that the individual soul is actually Krishna, but soul is every other individual soul. In other words, well, they're not Krishna. Krishna is them, though. That's why you're happy serving Krishna and not yourself, because we ourselves are not Krishna. In other words, the Achintya Bheda Tattva understanding can be applied here. Krishna is everything, including me. So when I serve him, I become happy. When I serve myself, I don't. Because the main misunderstanding that keeps us going round and around in this material world is that instinctively is that just because he's me doesn't mean I'm him. I'm only him in small part. So there's Krishna and there's me, and everything, including my laryngitis, my voice, all I am is a quantum of Brahman that like a dimensionless point in space from which consciousness and desire emanates. They say that 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair is the size of the soul, but that's in context to, how big is a hair in such a yuga? How big is a hair, one hair, a tip of a hair in Kali Yuga? It's very different. What they're really saying is the soul is infinitesimal. It's the quantum. It's a quanta. And it's really just a dimensionless point in physical space from which consciousness and desire emanates. And Krishna is emanating this individual, infinite number of them, because he has an infinite number of desires for relationship of an individual nature. And So as soon as I can realize that I'm not this body and I'm not Krishna, and just start serving Krishna because he is me and that makes me happy, I got to remember that I'm not him. So in other words, that's one way of looking at the whole philosophy that we're seeing here. It's not exactly like let's see, the super soul is actually the director in cooperation with the individual soul. What he's doing is fulfilling the desires. He knows the desires and what the individual soul deserves, both his desires and karma. And but you may, I don't know, you may recall that Leela I spoke of about how Krishna and Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were seen in a dream, but they're real. They're actually there as conscious beings in Mother Sachi's dream, and they go into the Shalagram Shila temple room, and they come out of there with the Krishna Balaram deities. But somehow or other, as dreams go, somehow or other, the Krishna Balaram deities were also able to stand in front of them, and they were having an argument as little boys. Mother Sachi is seeing this in her dream. They're snatching ladus from each other's mouths. This is our place. Nobody want, Lord Nitai is saying nobody wants you and your butter thieving activities anymore. You're Brahmins now. This is our time, our place. While Balaram, speaking for Krishna and Balaram deities, as little boys now, are saying, okay, we're going to tie you up and leave you here outside, and nobody's going to blame us for you not doing what my Lord Krishna says. And Lord Nityananda replies, as they're still snatching ladus from each other's mouths and arguing like little boys, Lord Nityananda replies, who cares about your Krishna? My Lord is Gauranga Mahaprabhu. He's and they go on and on like this. And Mother Sachi is seeing this dream, and suddenly Lord Nityananda looks at Mother Sachi and says, I'm hungry. And that wakes her up. And then she's dumbfounded by this dream. But in other words, Krishna has the ability to manifest other Krishnas, to have a relationship with them. He can do this unlimitedly. And he can manifest himself interacting with other forms of himself unlimitedly, and they are acting as separate persons. And he does this with the jiva souls, unlimited jiva souls who can only do that, though. They're not equally powerful like him, even though they all know the one Krishna is the most powerful, the origin. So we don't have that ability that Vishnu Tattva has to manifest another soul and have a relationship with it separately. But we are just quanta, we're small part and parcels. But more accurately stated as being just a small point, a dimensionless point in space from which our desires and our consciousness emanates. And Krishna does everything. So Super Soul Gauranga in our heart does everything, causes everything to happen according to our desires and what we deserve. So it's a simple picture really of, I hope, of Krishna manifesting another soul. Because he's unlimited, he manifests other infinite souls, both Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva, us. So it's not that the individual soul is he's doing it in cooperation with the individual soul. Super soul is actually doing everything, and he enjoys the way the individual consciousness reciprocates with him if he'll do it. And it's always an infinite. It's always an individual relationship that nobody else has with Krishna. That's another thing. Before I move on, in Brihad Bhagavatamrita 3:6-11, Sukadeva Goswami states that in all of states that every living entity has its own relationship with Krishna. And Krishna makes it so, even including in Vrindavan, the trees and the sand grains, Krishna is called Vilas Prakash. His Vilasa Prakash, he expands with each one and tells them and gives them the feeling that they wind up thinking, I alone am most dear to Krishna. Not a soul in Vrindavan, human or otherwise, doesn't think that. And it's because of an individual relationship that every last little spark of consciousness has with Krishna. So there's a purpose for your existence, but we got to figure it out that we're not, just because he's me, it doesn't mean that I'm him. And that's sort of like a simple way to look at the Chintabheda Tattva philosophy too. Just because he is me doesn't mean I'm him. For one thing, I'm happy when I serve him, but not when I serve myself, because I can't do anything. I can't control this body. I got to deal with laryngitis, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, now the purport. The Supreme. If anybody comes up with any contradictions for us to solve, they maybe in question and answer time. I'll wait because there's a lag time in conversation. I'll wait for a minute or two for someone to come up with one. Because contradictions can trouble some of the younger, less mature devotees. They actually use it as an excuse often for fall down behaviors. Like they can't believe that the moon came from the ocean of milk, when actually it's a trans-dimensional phenomena. It's seen that way on the level of the demigods and the sages of the previous yuga. And in fact, Radharani saw it both ways, as we would see it in the Kali Yuga and in the Dwapara Yuga. It's in other words, the moon, the sun god is actually, the sun is actually a god on a chariot to them, but all we see is a big fireball in the sky and speculate on what we can see with our Kali Yuga conditioned senses to be just a big ball of fire in the sky 93 million miles away. Oh, wow, I'm getting way out of there. But anyway, quantum physics in the, please bear with me. Quantum physics has now confirmed in its final resolution to the long-standing controversy in quantum physics in the Nobel Peace Prize awarded in 2022. The basic confirmation there is that the individual cannot perceive, the scientist cannot perceive material phenomena, distinct as material phenomena, distinct from his own activities to see it, his own desires, choices, and how he wants to see it. It is not independent of the mind. Matter is not independent of the mind that perceives it. That's the essence of it, of what was discussed. And of course, most conventional scientists are still trying to spin off theories, string theory, many worlds theory, with really laughable logic. But in any event, back to the purport. I'm sorry for all that. I went off a little bit there. The Supreme Person. Oh yeah, I was just saying, knowing how things can be what the Bhagavatam says they are, makes it harder for a young devotee to get away with thinking that this isn't real stuff. Who says the moon can come from an ocean of milk? What's an ocean of milk? See, that's all I'm saying, why I'm always talking about contradictions. Okay, so the Supreme Personality of Godhead distinctly says, I got to have some water here. Excuse me. The Supreme Personality of Godhead distinctly says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham hriday sunivisto mata smritir gyanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. And that's the quote, close quote. Although the Atma, Prabhupada continues, although the Atma, the soul, is present in every material body, dehinosmin yata dehe, he is not actually the chief person acting through the senses, mind, and soma. The soul can merely act in cooperation with the supersoul because it is the supersoul who gives him directions to act or to not act. Mataha smritir gananam abohanam cha. in other words, again, the word cooperation is used, but actually it's supersoul detecting from this quantum of consciousness that he's constantly, continuously, timelessly emanating from himself. Can you, I'm going to decline. Okay. So he may come to the door. So maybe not right now, but just tell him not now. If you hear a knock on the door. So one cannot act without his sanction. In other words, he's actually doing it, and he's doing it according to your desire. But he also has to, supersoul also has to do things according to what you deserve. Okay, he's the witness. One cannot, because supersoul is upadastra and anamanta, the witness and the sanctioner. One who studies carefully under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master can understand the real knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually the conductor of all the activities of the individual soul and the controller of their results as well. Although the individual soul possesses indriyas or senses, is not actually the proprietor, for proprietor is the supersoul. This body is his energy. Consequently, the supersoul is called Hrishikesh, and the individual soul is advised by direction of the supersoul to surrender to him and thus be happy. Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam praja. Thus he can become immortal and transferred to the spiritual kingdom. Immortal meaning you just wake up out of this material illusion, where he can be transferred to the spiritual kingdom, where he will achieve the highest success of an eternal blissful life of knowledge. Now this is, they're talking about Krishna, so, and Krishna doesn't hand out prema, of course. He hands out liberation, like tissue paper at a wedding or something. He just gives it to everybody. Everybody in the battlefield who saw Krishna got liberation, etc. But that means because Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra is Vasudeva Krishna, they're probably going to, except for those who were really his enemies like Duryodhana. I'm not sure what his fate was, but they probably wound up looking just like Vishnu in Narayan Loka, with four arms and holding the club mace, disc, and conch, and etc. And maybe different colors. There's a little variety there, but it's just a blessing every day. There's no young people. There's no old, well, everybody's young. There's no old people. There's no sun and moon because everything is self-illuminated. There's no nighttime activities like there is in Goloka Vrindavan. There's no moon that comes out. There's no particular romance. It's just that every day is just a bowl of peaches, kind of blessing kind of thing. That's what Krishna does. Lord Chaitanya comes along and he hands out prema to everybody who sees him and his associates. So there's a difference there. What's being the benefit, and when it says going back to the spiritual kingdom where he will achieve the highest success, eternal blissful life, knowledge. That's basically what happens when it's with Krishna, way back then. In conclusion, Prabhupada continues, in conclusion, the individual soul is different from the body, the senses, the living force, and the airs within the body. And above him is the supersoul, who gives the individual soul all facilities. The individual soul who renders everything to the supersoul lives very happily within the body. So in other words, even in this lifetime. And very happily means you're following all the sadhana and all the rules of devotional service, since that's a yajna, a sacrifice, but one who does it is is basically, if he's acting on the liberated platform, he's liberated. There's every once in a while we hear about how Prabhupada, in more than one case, talked to a pujari about what is the mood of Krishna today. And the pujari doesn't know to, this one was in Dallas, but he's done this in Dwarka, in the New Dwarka too, LA. And he says, well, if you stick to your service, if you take your service seriously, eventually you will know what the deity's mood is. He may even talk to you someday, whether it's by moving his actual physical mouth, physically manifested mouth, or just you see that in your mind. Either way, it's him. But Prabhupada never told us all to become pujaris. Why didn't he tell us all to become pujaris? It's because you can also do this with book distribution or other services. You don't need to be a pujari to experience Krishna actually advancing to the point where Krishna actually interacts with you. And in fact, I'm old and I have experiences in my altar with my Prabhupada picture beyond just Vani, Prabhupada's Vani. When these spiritual masters are passing on, they don't just leave, they don't depart, they don't actually do that. In Prabhupada's case, he is everywhere that Super Soul is with an ISKCON devotee, waiting for that devotee to call on him and interact with him, not just through his body, not just through his books. That's valid too. He is in his instructions. He's actually conscious there. And he tries to, but there's more to it. It's like you can actually experience him as a pujari experience, an advanced pujari experiences the mood of the deity. And okay, so that's the end of the report. Now, does anybody have any kind of questions? I went through and I said I wound up saying an awful lot there, and anybody is welcome to ask questions about anything, especially contradictions. I love resolving contradictions. So I'm going to wait a couple minutes while somebody thinks of or wants to question me and the things I've said. Go ahead and do that too.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Madhavat Pranam to you. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Thank you so much for your discourse. Hare
Yes.
Krishna.
Haribol.
Yeah, it's so nice. It's so nice that we are learning about soul and super soul connection kind of a thing, and it reminded me of when we read in the Bhagavad Gita that the two birds in the heart, right, is a similar thing.
Yes.
Where the soul and super soul is there, and just that through the bhakti and through the Krishna consciousness, through chanting, the connection is made between both of them. Otherwise, how do we connect together? Because one is simply witnessing and the other one is just doing the fruitive activities. So it reminded me of that words through your realization, and so is there anything more you can add in this context? That is one of the main points I'm trying to understand in these words today.
Oh, well, first of all, I'm a faithless fool, and I'm just trying to become a good Kanishta. So it's not that I have any realization, but Krishna granted me a logical mind, and so I don't need to have faith in something that I can understand by knowledge. But that doesn't mean that I don't have troubles. It's still a fight. But anyway, as far as the super soul is concerned, I was going to say this too, that when people do yoga now, and this pertains to what you're talking about, when people do yoga now, they ignore the classic definition of yoga, which is to yoke up, to link up. And yoga means to link with something other than yourself, if you're the subject of the yoga, of the linking process. In other words, what good does it do to link to yourself? that's no more smart than saying I'm relating to myself or I'm comparing to myself. You're not really saying anything. One doesn't relate one to oneself simply because it doesn't say anything or do anything. There's this Khalil Gibran, I think he was a Persian poet. He said, you can have no matter how good the violin, something like this, no matter how good the violin, if you have one string and you pluck it, it's going to be a high quality monotone. So there's oneness there. But if you can have so little as two strings and tune them to harmonize, then the result is so much more sublime. Because the oneness is actually in two things relating, which implies by the statement of yoga that I am not that which I'm relating to, because there's nothing to relate to if it's just me. That's what that implies. And that's what yoga means. So modern yoga, when I was talking about the mentality of do what you think is best for yourself, believe in yourself, yogas, they don't talk about that definition of yoga anymore. But that can degrade immediately into, because you're not linking up with super soul. It can degrade in the Kali Yuga manner. It's like really horrific things happen. Evil happens as a result, ultimately, of how Kali Yuga can twist that. So when you're linking up to super soul, in your heart, the bird decides to turn to the super soul. The bird sees that someone else is here, and that someone else is in control, and there's someone to relate to besides me. And therefore, that's the meaning of yoga. So was that helpful, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji, and like I really like the last line in the translation. The super soul conducting the activities of the body is different from the body and living force. So, like often we say, no, like in relationship there has to be two people. So even
Yes.
at this level of a soul and super soul, there are two identities or something like that we can say. And how, just like I mentioned about the two bird example, so it really makes sense. And it makes us understand that we are small and the ocean is so big. So it's like we just a drop in the ocean. So we keep our humble this thing. So Prabhuji, one more question I have, not completely related to class. Can I ask you, or you want the questions to be related to your class?
Oh, no, ask me any question.
Okay, so like yesterday we were on the call here, and I happened to, we know that we lost His Holiness Bhakti Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, couple of days back. So, one question was coming to my mind is that normally for souls, like souls like us, um, Prabhuji, you were mentioning about being fallen. Like, I mean, you're not fallen at all. You're so senior, you're Prabhupada disciple. But we are in that situation, condition, and in real, you know. So for us, when our body is, like finished, is going to finish, then they burn the body, right? But in case of like, special souls like Bhakti Charu Maharaj, there are so many others, Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, they do the samadhi, they give the samadhi in which the body is not burnt, and then they make like a big hole in the ground, and they put salt and they preserve the body there. So but we often also hear from our like seniors, and maybe from Krishna consciousness, that it is very essential for every human being's body to be burnt, because the soul is attached to the super soul. So in the sense that once the body is gone, then at least so how does it happen with maharajas uh, who are given samadhi? How does this happen with them? Although it is happening, because in a way they are spiritual masters, and of course they are representative of Krishna, and and we but still, as in my conditioning, I think of them as like they have a human body, just like you and me and others, So I'm sorry for elongating the question so long, but I just wanted the answer for this. It was there in my mind. Yesterday, I was not able to get the answer because we had to suddenly close the call.
Okay, so basically, the spiritual master who is successful, it becomes obvious to everyone that his body has been spiritualized. And ultimately, if we remember what I was saying about quantum mechanics, ultimately, the body doesn't even exist anyway. It's a dream body. But because we can still be attached to this dream body, if there's any attachment left in the heart, then the safest thing to do is just cremate. And that ensures that the soul will have to move on. Sometimes the soul likes to linger, and so that makes it necessary for cremation. It's just the cleanest. It's the cleanest thing to do. It makes it easier for that soul to wander and to see, especially one who has even chanted Hare Krishna once, to see that actually they're going back, whether it's the slow path, the fast path, they're going back to Godhead. And when the body is burned, then they know, well, there's nothing to be attached there now. Whereas a spiritual master, he's put in samadhi because his dream body, which never really existed, it's just the stuff of dreams, was spiritualized. It became Brahman. The substance of the material world is actually Brahman. When a devotee offers a plate of food to Krishna, the devotee doesn't do it like a rich person might do it. He doesn't have material mentality. He knows he's offering Brahman to the source of Brahman. Brahman is actually the substance of this dream, but it takes temporary shapes. And the temporary shapes are non-existent. Ultimately, that means non-existent. It's dreamlike. It comes once and then it goes away forever. And because you can't begin an eternity any more than you can end one, it never existed in the first place, that temporary form. It doesn't exist. But a spiritual body of a material body of a spiritual master has been spiritualized, and it transcends. In other words, he absorbs all this karma from his Diksha disciples. So it becomes easier for them to do their devotional service. And but he integrated that karma by transcending it. So it didn't bother him until eventually it piles up. And Krishna wants him back. And so what happens is that his so-called material body, which is actually Brahman, just like a sincere devotee offering Brahman, Prashadam, that is, Brahman, something that's real to Krishna. The spiritual body, the body of the spiritual master, having been spiritualized, is preserved as a place of remembrance and a place where one of the many places now that the spiritual master can see and interact with his disciples. The spiritual master in that kind of case is no longer limited to manifesting in a single place and time in the material world with the limits of a physical body. Now that spiritual master can be everywhere that the supersoul is with one of his disciples, and wants that disciple to call on him. But Prabhupada, I did I was a PI, a private investigator, and I did a very cursory statement content analysis of Prabhupada's use of the word material. And 37 out of 38 times, he used the word material as a state of mind. Just like the quantum physicists discovered, material isn't independent of the mind. They can't find a way to objectify it. It's a state of mind. The one time that Prabhupada used the word material as a in a material sense was somebody, he's speaking of bread like it's food, and somebody asked him, and he answered the question, you have to feed your material body bread, material bread. And no, you have to feed your material body material bread. But his emphasis was on, so you don't lose your material body and take up another dream body and lose me as your spiritual master. In other words, how is that saying something contrary? You must feed your material body material bread. In other words, you are dreaming, you are this body. It's a temporary thing that came once and then will never come back again. It doesn't really exist in eternal time, this material body. But the spiritual master fully used his material body to the point where it was fully spiritualized. He lived, in other words, one who is qualified by this by the benefit that he was able to give to others. Everyone could see it was quite eminent that he was fully spiritualized. What's the use of cremating that when it can become a gathering point for his disciples? So he's given us a samadhi, but it's a spiritual body at that point. In other words, it never was material from the point that whether he's sadhaka, siddha, or nitya siddha, either way, from that point, his body was no longer in the illusion of being material, and he had no attachment to it. It's not something that needs to be cremated, so that which is a dream activity. The cremation itself is a dream activity. One part of a dream is destroying another part of a dream. When we act to cremate a body, he's whether he's a sadhaka, pure devotee, or a nitya siddha, in either case, that becomes a gathering place where now he's no longer limited to his physical manifesting through his physical manifestation just in one place at one time, and only a few devotees who are near him can interact with him. Now he can be everywhere that his devotees are. He can be everywhere that his disciple, that Supersoul is with his disciples, and interact with them simultaneously. Krishna enables them to do that. I hope that helps. I have a tendency to be confusing, but that's the reason why there's some get a samadhi, and most are cremated. Rupina Padma said something. I've got this thing that says iPhone iPhone something, but Rupina Padma said something to me when we talked a month ago that reminded me that maybe she has a little bit of this feeling. She said something like Prabhupada did not go anywhere. What she said was relational. It implied, she understood on some level, that Prabhupada did not go anywhere. He's still with us. He is somewhere else, but time in the spiritual world doesn't work the same way it does here. He can have time to be with every individual disciple. Krishna doesn't just dance for a night of Brahma with the gopis, and then everybody wakes up the next morning and it's just another day in Vrindavan. He also has a night of Brahma when he's so excited and playing with the cowherd boys in games. He also lets that go for a night of Brahma. This is like, after the destruction of the universe, Brahma has to wake up and recreate. But yet he brings them all back to the same time they were previously in. He can manipulate time, or his Yoga Maya can manipulate time any way they want. This material time doesn't really exist. And there was once when Radha and Krishna were actually dancing with peacocks. The peacocks were so fascinated that they started falling over in ecstasy. And this dance with the peacock, both Radha and Krishna were dancing with the movements of peacocks, went on for a night of Brahma. So Krishna does this with everybody. He lets everybody feel like I alone am most dear to Krishna. And this night of Brahma thing, it went on and on. He does this all the time too. And also Lord Chaitanya, many of Lord Chaitanya's kirtans went on for a night of Brahma. And then he wakes up the next day, they all go out to the Ganga, bathe, go home. And then there's the usual people that were insulting Sri Thakur and saying the Kasis are going to come and get them, the next day. Time, as we think of it, doesn't really exist. It's not a simple linear thing. But again, that's all scientific, and I'm sorry if I'm losing people with that. But I remember Rupina Padma said something that sort of implied she had that feeling that that Prabhupada didn't go anywhere. He's with us. There is a difference between now Gopal Krishna Goswami, if he's not just in his vana either. He's actually active alongside Super Soul in the heart of his disciple. As far as ISKCON is concerned, he'll be encouraging his disciple not to promote him as the best acharya, as the best guru. Since he's a part of ISKCON, he'll be inspiring that disciple to promote Prabhupada as the ISKCON founder acharya. And that way we all have unity as ISKCON and there won't be any chaos. So they're relating too. I mean, put on a simple level, you can say that Gopal Krishna Goswami is gone because Prabhupada needed him. And they're carrying on their Leela. And because time works differently, it doesn't really exist the way we're dreaming it. All these things can go on simultaneously as far as our experience is concerned. And Rupini Padma said something, and I said that to her, said something last time we talked a month ago when she was doing some scheduling that implied she wasn't aware of that on some level. So that's my compliments to her. Are there any other questions?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the answer. And there are so many other things you spoke in the class. And also, we are so fortunate to have your association. And we are very, very fortunate. So thank you so much for connecting with us. And please be with us at least once a month, so that way we can have your association and we can enrich our Krishna conscious life. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I thank you. And yeah, this is inspiring to me too, because I know I'm helping a preaching effort. I'm helping people maintain their Krishna consciousness while out there in Patala Loka someplace, Patala Loka, America. Yeah, I thank you very much. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be getting healthier here pretty soon. My sun transits are changing, and I think I should be doing better next month. And so just as the schedule kind of confuses me a little bit at times, because that's just because I'm old. But I do look forward to this, though, at the very least once a month. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close up now and get to a few things left undone. And I really appreciate everyone's patience with me.
And we also pray that you have good health, Prabhuji, as you were not feeling too well. I also previously went through a lot of coughing and cold because of the change in weather. It was very, very bad. And I was, not able to even join the call. But seeing you, I'm so inspired that you came to give a class in spite of not having good health because of change in weather. So we pray that you feel better. So I think we can end the.
Yes, Mataji. So thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful class. And we'll pray for your speedy recovery. And let's pay obeisances to all the Vaishnavas. Panchakalpataruvesya Krupa Sindhu Patitanam
Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah.
अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नमाचार्य श्रद्धा ठाकुर की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। His Grace
Jai.
Gokul Das Prabhu की जय।
Jai.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Haribol, I appreciate your association very much. I'm looking forward to the next time. Haribol.
Hari Bol. Thank you.
Hari Bol. Hari Bol.
Thank you, Gita Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.